92.7, also on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale. We're live on W93.5 in Wa and beyond this evening. Power to the people as Supreme Court directs political parties to open participation in presidential and parliamentary primaries to all registered members of the party. But the directive triggers mixed reactions. Stay with us. We have the key persons in the various political parties, at least the major two, that's the MPP and the NDC, joining us this evening to have a conversation on this matter. This is a very, very important development. It's a landmark ruling we're going to be getting into. Also, the Attorney General has a say in the prosecution of corruption and corruption-related cases, says the Supreme Court of Ghana. This evening, we ask, does this water down the independence of the Office of the Special Prosecutor? Stay with us here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Later on the program, Dawn Power trips plunges many of the countryside into total darkness as engineers scramble to find some solution to this. And as we speak, power has been restored to many of the areas that were affected, but we'll get an update on it here on Hot Edition on 3FM and 92.7. Also on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale. We're live on W93.5 in Wa and beyond. More on the courts. The court has blocked the former buffer stock company Hanan's wife from traveling to the UK for her son's treatment. Stay with us. We'll tell you why the court took this particular decision. All these and more, including sports, in the next 1 hour. Let's settle for the summary of the news now. Deborah Mensah is here.
Thank you, Alfred. First, on the news summary, the Ashanti Regional Directorate of the Health Services has raised concern over chronic hepatitis B in the region, warning that an estimated 500,000 people are living with the infection. Briefing the media to celebrate World Hepatitis B Day at Formina Hospital in the Adansi North District of the Ashanti region, the regional director, Dr. Fred Adomako-Boateng, described hepatitis B as a silent killer. Also, policy analyst and private legal practitioner Austin Kwabena Bracco-Powers has criticized the planned 30% transport fare increase announced by the Ghana Private Road Transport Union, describing the move as purely selfish and insensitive to the economic difficulties currently facing Ghanaians. And also, the Accra Regional Police Command says investigations into the building collapse at Aveno in Accra is ongoing, with several state institutions conducting technical assessment to determine the cause of the incident. And the collapse, which occurred on June 7, 2026, claimed the lives of 3 people and left 1 other person seriously injured. We also have the Ghana Railway Development Authority, GRDA, issuing a strong public warning over the illegal sale and leasing of railway land and buildings by unauthorized persons, particularly in the Western North and Ashanti regions, according to a statement signed by the Chief Executive Officer of the GRDA, Dr. Frederick Apo, who is acting on the directive of the Minister for Transport, Joseph Bukari Nipe. And last, on the summaries, Organized Labour has called on the National Labour Commission, NLC, to refrain from seeking court injunctions to halt industrial actions after workers have complied with the legal requirement of notifying the Commission of their intention to strike. The Secretary General of Ghana Trade Union Congress, TUC, Joshua Ansah, said the practice undermines workers' right to industrial action and could further deteriorate the country's labor relations. That's it for the news summary, Alfred.
Deborah, thank you so much. You can find more of the news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Hot Edition. We're live on Kesmi 107.1 and on W93.5 in Wa and beyond. Let's get into the issues this evening here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7, and it's one that has got many people reacting, and I'm talking about a decision by the Supreme Court earlier today, and one that will go a long way to determine how presidential and parliamentary candidates are elected in the coming months. Well, the MPP may have escaped the impact of this ruling, but the Supreme Court has ruled by a 5-2 majority decision that all registered members in good standing of political parties must be allowed to vote in the election of their party leaders and candidates. The decision effectively overturns the long-standing delegate system employed by Ghana's major political parties, paving the way for a one-member, one-vote system in internal party elections. The ruling is expected to have far-reaching implications for the organization of political parties and the conduct of future presidential, parliamentary, and executive primaries. A 7-member panel delivered the judgment earlier today, bringing to a close a constitutional challenge that has generated intense legal and political debate over the extent of democratic participation within political parties. The suit was filed by former Minister for Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, Professor Kwabena Frimpong-Boateng, veteran politician, talked with Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, and former Lands and Forestry Minister, Dr. Christina Nyama. Now, they argued that restricting voting rights to a limited number of delegates was inconsistent with the democratic principles enshrined in Ghana's 1992 constitution. Now, for decades, Ghana's leading political parties, including the NPP, the NDC, the CPP, and the PNC, have relied on delegate-based electoral colleges to elect presidential candidates, parliamentary candidates, and national executives. Under the arrangement, voting rights were reserved for selected party executives, constituency officers, and accredited delegates, leaving the vast majority of ordinary members as registered members of the party without a direct say in choosing the party's leadership as to who leads them going forward. Now, this is a big issue which we're going to be getting into shortly. We'll be joined shortly by a senior political science lecturer at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Professor Samuel Edujemfi. Also, the MPP and the NDC, Rashid Tanko Computer, who is a director of IT and elections for the NDC, and then also Richard Ahiagba, who is the director of communications of the New Patriotic Party. Both will be joining us to have a conversation. That's and the NPP's director of elections, Ivan Sinemakon, also will be joining us to have a conversation on this. Mustafa Gbande is a Deputy General Secretary of the NDC and the Director of Operations of the Presidency. He's joining us right now on the telephone. And Alhaji Mustafa Gbande, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Alfred.
And thank you for joining us this evening. And I'm sure you've been following what's happened at the Supreme Court today, essentially doing away with the delegate system and directing you, political parties, to allow all registered members in good standing to take part in the voting to elect leaders and candidates in the name of the political party. I mean, how do you react to this?
Thank you very much, and good evening to our cherished listeners. First of all, I think that the determination today by the Supreme Court have been noted by the NDC. As you are aware, it's a landmark policy decision which requires a little bit more scrutiny and understanding of the judgment. As we speak, we have not yet had full appreciation of the judgment because you recall that some incidental matters will have to be cured by the judgment. We haven't appraised ourselves with that. And so the NDC will appraise ourselves with that, and then if we have a public comment. But as you know, it is not new to the NDC. We have, in time past, tried to deepen our democratic participation by members, where we decided that all members in good standing was going to participate in our presidential selections candidate. We had some challenges and had to abandon that process in some time past. So it is not strange to us that this is coming up. We just have to look at the feasibility of it, look at how that is practicable, and see how it aligns with the aspirations of our people. And I think that we are good to go. It's very important to remark the fact that all of the people who have gone to court have tasted the bad, deteriorated nature in terms of how selection of candidates are done in the MPP. All of them are from the stock of the MPP. And so it quite suggests that they may have had a bad taste of deterioration in the party. But on the other hand, as for us, we have made some efforts to try and expand our college in the past, so it's not strange to us at all.
I see. But if the court has given a directive, in fact, this is a Supreme Court decision, and so I want to understand if you say you're now going to examine and then see how it aligns with the party's workings. Just explain that for me, because this is a judgment that has to be complied with.
Yes, it's a judgment, but you comment on a judgment after you have fully appreciated the contents of the judgment. And as a body, we need to review the elders who have to look at it. This is a major policy directive in terms of our political organization. And so it's important that we appreciate the details of the judgment as a body. Then based on that, we are instructed to speak to the public and address in terms of how prepared the NDC is as far as the judgment is concerned going forward.
And you make the point about what could have actually, influenced the plaintiffs to go on this path, because there have been concerns about this delegate system and the weaknesses that comes with it. Is this a cure to the weaknesses in the delegate system?
Well, for me, dealing with corruption in itself, in my personal opinion, is not necessarily about the political bodies. It's about the system. The systems of the country is what need to be tightened. And so recently when the MPP did their flag bearer race, they actually expanded the electoral college. In spite of that, you have witnessed the widespread of monetization that occurred where money was a competition and a race. That does not really reflect the situation of the NDC. And so we are unable to conclude that when you opened your electoral college cures monetization. In other words, all of the people who have gone, including Elder Nyao Tamak, they've tried to be presidents before, and it probably could not have worked. And so they would have tasted the bad nature of how monetized the MPP situation is. But in our situation, it may be different.
Well,
but ideally, I think that widening the electoral college gives a wider participation of members. It also makes it impossible for some manipulations to happen. It is going to put pressure on political candidates, i.e. presidential and parliamentary, to ensure that they touch base with every single individual that matters, to be able to get a wider consensus. It's no longer going to be a smaller group of people where there's gatekeeping and all of that. So it will cure some problem, but it also comes with its own challenges. Who is going to fund the whole electoral process? For us, at the end, and I believe that my brothers in the MPP also do the same, we engage the Electoral Commission. We pay some money for the Electoral Commission to supervise our elections. So if you are then going to host these elections as though it's a national election, how are we going to fund that? If you are saying that we monetize the process by keeping a small electoral college, if it becomes big, the expenditure becomes high. Who pays for it? Who is going to print all the ballot papers across the country? It's a conversation that we need to have, because since it's a Supreme Court decision, the direction in terms of how this is going to be funded have to come clear on it. Because, and two, there are other school of thought that believe that it's going to increase revenue generation of political parties in terms of dues payment. What happens when you have a party or a time where your members are unable to pay their dues? They are so demoralized that they are not able to pay their dues. Will you then say that you cannot hold these Supreme Court mandated elections to select your parliamentary candidates and presidential candidates? So there are issues that must be discussed at the back of these judgment that has been given by the Supreme Court. And for us in the NDC, We will sit and peruse it, discuss it, and appropriately address the public in course.
Right, and most of us stay with me, and you diagnose the issues quite clearly about what this could solve and what it could not solve. But as for the matter of monetization, one of the challenges with the delegate system, it cuts both ways. Both the MPP and the NDC have their own challenges with that. You know, you cited some examples of the MPP. NDC also, you remember in 2023, this Sechedumase, Juliana Kinang Wansan, that's the parliamentary candidate. Well, she was a parliamentary hopeful, I recall. Videos of she spreading money. There also is by-election we saw just a little over, in fact, almost a year ago, we saw what happened there as well. So that's a challenge or a problem with both MPP and the NDC. But then again, let me bring in Richard Anyagba, who's the Director of the Director of Communications for the MPP, and also seeking to be its first vice chair in the coming months. Mr. Anyagba, good evening.
Good evening, Alfred.
Thank you for joining us. And
My pleasure.
Great. You have your brother, Mustafa Gbandi, on the other line. I'm sure you listened to him diagnose what the NDC will do in respect to this Supreme Court ruling. 5-2 majority decision that all registered members in good standing in your party must be allowed to vote in the election of their party leaders, that's MPP leaders, and their candidates. First off, how is the party digesting this development?
Thank you very much, Alfred. Good evening to your listeners and to my brother, Mustafa. So I agree with Mustafa on the matter of cost. Because this is a very costly mandate that the Supreme Court is put on the political parties. I have not seen any indication from them whether or not they're going to compel government to fund this good cause democratic experiment that has been pushed on all of us to go the way of direct democracy. I think that ours is a representative democracy, and this ruling, for me, doesn't sit well with the rest of the democratic practices that we have embraced since 1992. I think that out of the good exuberance of our seniors who went to the Supreme Court, the practicality of this ruling is beyond what any political party, I will assume to speak for the NDC as well, can immediately afford in terms of the cost that it will bring about. And mind you that this is not just a once in a decade election. It's once every 4 years, and then you're going to do that in 276 constituencies. Even the state funding national elections struggles. How much more the political parties, and so it's a very costly mandate. I think that it's out of feel good, sentiment that this thing came about. It's an idealistic proposal, but somehow the Supreme Court has upheld it. So now it's become law. The question is that how do we fund it? And perhaps that's a question that someone would have to take to court and perhaps to the Supreme Court to clarify if they give such mandate, who pays for it? Because you cannot force people to find money or to give something they don't have. So that leg, I agree with Mustafa on that. But I want to also just disagree with the Supreme Court in this, essentially because, look, the rest of the practices that we undertake in our country, if this ruling is to stand, then we have to reverse everything. We have to look at a situation where an MP from a constituency will have to be voted for by all Ghanaians in that constituency, not just registered Ghanaians in that constituency.
What do you mean?
What I mean is that all Ghanaians are in good standing.
Well, they said that members of the political party in good standing, not all Ghanaians.
Yeah, but we're talking about election. We're talking about democracy. And this one is a ruling on democracy to say that the processes are not democratic enough. And so I'm saying that by extension, the practice in our country is not democratic enough when you have a constituency of, say, 15 million or 20,000 people, okay, then only about 7,000 or 8,000 or even 9,000 people are registered to vote. Then the other Ghanaians who are in good standing, but for one reason or the other couldn't register, are deemed not to be in good standing to vote in that election. They are excluded by virtue of not being in the register. It's the same thing that applies at the polling station, where at the initial stage of selecting the polling station executives, all members in party in good standing are allowed to vote. Those who are in our register are allowed to vote, and they vote. And when they have voted to select the 7 representatives from the polling station in our case, and 9 in the case of the NDC, they now constitute an electoral college by virtue of the vote of the majority at the polling station. They represent them, just like the MP goes to Parliament and represent everybody from that constituency, including those who didn't vote for him, including those who didn't get a chance to vote because they were not in the voting register, even though they are Ghanaians, qualified with evidence, demonstrable evidence that they are Ghanaians, but yet they can't vote because they are not in the register. What happens to that? Can we say, by this ruling, to say that let's scrap the voter registration process, or even if you have voter registration process, on election day, anybody who can demonstrate that I am a Ghanaian, in this case now with your Ghana card, but I didn't get a chance to register, should be allowed to vote because it's a Ghanaian in good standing, if that is the logic. So it opens a Pandora's box where people can now bring, suits to the Supreme Court for interpretation on matters such as this, to say that this is not democratic enough, that as a citizen, I don't get a chance to vote because when they were doing registration, I was preoccupied and I didn't go to vote. And you cannot say that registration is a prerequisite. You understand? Because what is the prerequisite is a Ghanaianness, that's the prerequisite, which is the same logic that has been applied in this case, that members of the party are members once they are in good standing. They should be allowed to vote. So if a Ghanaian is a Ghanaian and nothing stops him or nothing prevents him to be identified properly so as a Ghanaian, then they should also be able to vote in a constituency for an MP who is going to represent them. So I think that we are straying in a very dangerous path. This ruling, for me, sets us on a certain path that is not sustainable. But as it stands now, the party will look at it. Our initial questions that I think it seems to be the same with the NDC is that who bears the cost of this? And if the Supreme Court can give us any indication, perhaps they will make Dr. Atuforsen to create a special levy or something to fund this effort, because the government that is directing us to become democratically expanded in our internal affairs.
And it appears this is one of the few things that both the MPP and the NDC will agree on, be on the same path.
We agree on more than you really would know, except that often it is the NDC that doesn't agree when even they see the facts to be obvious. But on this occasion, we agree. Mustafa, we agree on this one, on the cost element of things.
Gentlemen, I appreciate you for this. And so, any idea of when the next move, or you want to study the ruling before you decide on what next to do, whether to seek a review or whatsoever, as in the political parties coming together in some sort of a class action?
No, Alfred, you know that the NDC earlier on indicated their support for the position that the plaintiffs were seeking to be installed by the Supreme Court, which has happened. So the NDC somehow maybe have some secret stash of cash that they are going to unleash.
Do you say the NDC supported the plaintiffs? Mustafa Bande, did you support the plaintiffs on this case?
No, equivocally, the NDC have not. Neither did we go to court.
I thought I had
ordered by the court. We were ordered by the court, just as the MPP was ordered to bring our opinion, because even as the case was advancing, it became the question of whether or not you could make such pronouncement without the political parties being involved.
Participation,
So
yes. So that's why we're compelled to join, yeah.
Exactly. But it is also important to note that the plaintiffs are all a talk of MPP. So when a rat is coming from a hole, it is only the rat that can tell the heat that is contained in the hole. So that is under the presumption that they would have stated a highly deteriorated rate at which the MPP elections have been monetized, which of course made them victims and cut short their aspirations. That's why they had to go to court.
I see.
Alfred, just a quick one.
In a minute, quickly. Yes.
So I don't think that the motive essentially is to cure monetization. The motive primarily is to expand opportunity for people to participate. It is not. So the monetization, curing monetization is the incidental value that will be drawn from that. But the primary motivation is to expand, to give more access to people to participate. I think that is their primary motivation.
Gentlemen, thank you. And we'll wait for what the two parties and other parties who are going to be affected by this will take. But thank you for your time, and we'll talk again. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm most grateful.
That Mustafa Gbande is the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC and Director of Operations at the Presidency. Also, Richard Ahiagba is Director of Communications for the NPP and seeking to be its first National Vice Chair. If you're just joining us, 30 minutes after 5, the Supreme Court has ruled by a 5-2 majority decision that all registered members of political parties in good standing must be allowed to vote in the election of their party leaders, that's flag bearer, party executives, and then, the parliamentary executives of the party. The decision effectively overturns the long-standing delegate system employed by Ghana's major political parties, where just a few persons described as delegates will gather somewhere and then decide who leads the party as flag bearer, as parliamentary candidate, party executives. The ruling effectively overturns this practice and is directing the political parties to put measures in place to ensure that this is done. The ruling is expected to have these far-reaching implications, as we've heard both the MPP and the NTC talk about, and they maintain that the political parties as institutions recognized under Article 55 of the Constitution are required to organize and operate in accordance with democratic principles, making broad participation in internal elections a constitutional imperative. This matter has caught the attention of members of parliament who have been talking about this, and let's take a listen to the local government minister, the Honorable Ahmed Ibrahim, who my colleague and our parliamentary affairs correspondent, Christian Yali, has been speaking to him, as well as the Honorable Ali Duseidu as well.
Supreme Court is bringing this kind of rule, it is constitutionally right but socially discriminatory, because minority tribes will not be represented. And we live in a country where tribes or ethnicity is one of our social structures. You can't do away with ethnicity, you can't do away with tribes. So clearly, where we are, you go to certain districts, and you clearly see that the tribes or the communities with the major numbers are going to be getting the people into this house. And those with that greater numbers are going to be eliminated. It's socially discriminatory and not inclusive at all. And I think, I'm not a judge, but I think this one, the Constitution speaks about inclusiveness. And so for us then to be able to arrive at this non-inclusive judgment, we need to wait for the final judgment to come. When we read it, then we'll go to be able to know why they took certain decisions. But we are politicians. But to be in that's a different arm of government. That is on meritocracy.
Which even in general elections, politicians usually spend money to get the people, the border masses to come out and vote, transportation and all those things. So what this will do, what this ruling will do, if you're going to implement it in the next year, it's not going to completely stop monetization. It is rather going to increase monetization, right? So if you're going to campaign to only 15 delegates, it means you are now going to campaign to maybe 50,000 eligible people who are qualified to vote in your constituency. That's not going to reduce the cost. It's going to double or even triple, quadruple the cost. But also, too, it is going to lead to politicians spending more money because you are going to spend enough resources campaigning across the length and breadth of your constituency for primaries as an MP. Then when you win, you are so exhausted, so bruised by the spending in the primaries. Then you now go to the main election to face the opponent of your opponent of the other political party, and you're going to spend more money again campaigning across the length and breadth of the constituency again to be able to win. So it's going to increase the costs, monetary terms. It's going to increase the fatigue. It's going to increase the pressure. And it's going to force politicians who are not able to save enough money to look for alternative sources of income. And that can lead to largely what we call use of illicit sources to be able to campaign if the state doesn't step in. So I think we have to let cool heads prevail. We see maybe the full decision of the reasons behind, the full written judgment.
So that's Professor Ali Dusedu, who is a Tamale Central Member of Parliament. Also, you heard there Ahmed Ibrahim is the Banda Member of Parliament, but also local government minister. Let's take a listen to talk with Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo. He's one of the plaintiffs in this case. And he has been talking effectively, lauding and thanking the Supreme Court for taking this decision, which has far-reaching consequences on internal democracy within the political parties.
The decision is a good decision. It means a lot to me, and I think it means a lot to the ordinary Ghanaian. To me, because we are practicing democracy, and most of us don't know how it came about.
That's topic Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo there. So leveling with us here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. A number of you have been sharing your thoughts. If you go on our Facebook page at 3FM 927, a number of you who have joined us in there, we're showing you some videos and pictures of what we've been talking about so far at 3FM 927 on Facebook and also on YouTube. You can connect with us and share your thoughts and views, comments, or opinions there. A number of you who have been commenting on this latest decision by the Supreme Court. But let's still stay with the Supreme Court. A lot has been happening at the Supreme Court today because in a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court has ruled that the powers of the Office of the Special Prosecutor to prosecute do not contravene Article 88 of the 1992 Constitution, which empowers the Attorney General with exclusive authority to initiate proceedings in the name of the Republic. The landmark ruling brings to an end the legal challenge over the OSP's prosecutorial powers, which had stalled a number of cases before the courts. Private legal practitioner Noah Adamte filed a suit seeking a declaration that Parliament acted unconstitutionally by establishing the Office of the Special Prosecutor with prosecutorial authority independent of the Attorney General. In his suit, which sought 8 reliefs, the plaintiff argued, among other things, that Article 88 of the Constitution exclusively vests prosecutorial powers in the Attorney General and that Parliament could not, through an ordinary act of Parliament, confer similar powers on another institution without first amending the Constitution. During the proceedings, the Attorney General aligned with that constitutional argument, maintaining that prosecutorial powers ought to be subject to the Attorney General's control and supervision rather than being permanently exercised by an autonomous statutory body. Lawyers for the OSP filed a joinder application to be added as respondents in the case, but it was dismissed by the Apex Court on the grounds that the existing parties could adequately assist in determining the matter. So a 7-member panel earlier today at the Supreme Court, presided over by the Chief Justice himself, Paul Bafoboni, held that the OSP has the authority to independently initiate and prosecute cases. The Apex Court, however, noted that the Attorney General retains the power to enter a nolle prosequi in a case initiated by the OSP, adding that all prosecutions, convictions, and freezing orders secured by the OSP remain valid. Now, a number of people have been reacting to this, but first off, let's take a listen to the Deputy Attorney General, Dr. Adam Shemsai, speaking to the media after the ruling earlier today.
The fact that the AG can now discontinue cases started by the...
No, but that has always been our position, so...
Oh, that was pretty short there. He says it's been their position, but guess what? There are a number of people who have been reacting to this, to the extent that then what is the true independence that the OSP holds? Because if he can initiate a case, but then the Attorney General can enter a nolle prosequi, then how does that impact on the independence that the Supreme Court sought to hold, the autonomous powers that the OSP has? And this is where we bring in a constitutional lawyer to have a conversation on this. John Kwesen, Counsel, good evening. Also, Martin Pipo is going to be joining us shortly. Counsel, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, my brother. It's been a while. Hope all is well.
All is well, and thank you for asking. First, great. Now, I'm sure you've heard this ruling by the Supreme Court. We're yet to have the full details. But then again, question is, I mean, if the OSP's autonomy and independence has been upheld by this ruling, but then it also goes on to say that the Attorney General retains the power to enter a nolle prosequi in a case initiated by the OSP, then where lies the true independence of the special prosecutor in this ruling?
Okay, so now quickly let's lay the foundation. What has transpired today has brought the status quo to where it was originally. So let's say that with the ruling today, the changes that the AG wanted to bring about and was granted at the High Court has been put aside. So the Supreme Court has made a ruling that restores what originally existed. Now, what existed was that the OSP had come to join the other state institutions who were either to assisting the AG in prosecution, i.e. the police, okay, for instance, were assisting the AG at court lower to the High Court. Now, what has happened doesn't necessarily change anything. The original thing that existed was that much as some prosecutorial powers were given to the police to assist with prosecution, the agency retained the powers to enter this nolle prosequi applications. So that is it. The nolle prosequi normally doesn't come as and when, but then at certain times where the state or the government realizes that this particular prosecution or matter before the court, the state will have to come in. And that is where the AG will have to exercise its discretion. That said, the independence, the autonomy of the OSP will be there at all material point in time. And I think this is exactly what the entire country was looking for. For a very long time, the mischief was that you can't give all the powers of prosecution to the states who themselves are coming from either MPP or NDC. So if it is the case that it is the executive that will appoint an attorney general, then when the officers of the executive do something, the president will be reluctant or the AG will be reluctant. If that is so, then let's get an independent body that will step in to handle such cases that we thought for so many years it was impossible for Attorney General to handle. So for anybody to come with another counter proposal or suggesting that the alternative thing that the whole country wanted should be scrapped or the power should be taken away from them, meant that we're coming back to the position that we said we needed an extra body independent of a sort to help.
But the issue, and you talk about the restoring the status quo, the issue was about whether or not the OSP needed authorization from the Attorney General to prosecute corruption and corruption-related offenses. Has this ruling addressed that fundamental question that was at the heart of this case? That has been determined. That is
why I said the status quo remains. They still do not need authorization. The only instance that the Supreme Court wanted to use as an exception is the aspect of the nolle prosecutor thing. And that is where I try to explain that the nolle prosecutor at some point in time is also necessary, because we cannot also allow the OSP to live in an island of a sort. Give them all the powers. But where it becomes necessary that the apex authority or the government must come in the best interest of the states, then you can give them the opportunity for the AG to also come in. And mind you, when we were laying the foundation when these issues came up, I was able to trace from the fact that there was actually no issue, but for the heads of the institutions who personally had one or two issues among themselves, which didn't have anything to do with the Attorney General as an office or OSP as an office. It had everything to do with the personalities, the human beings who were manning this institution.
Right.
And we lay bare the fact where the heads of the institution were publicly engaging each other seamlessly in physicals of a sort.
Right.
And that led to this subsequent filing in court.
Great.
So if you take out the personal issues, then really there wasn't any problem at all to begin with, whether the activities of the OSP was conflicting with the AG or not.
I see. So you pin this down to the tough war between the OSP and the AG that led to this.
The human being and not the office.
I see. Thank you.
My analysis was that. So what happened?
Because of time, I'm going to come to you again, but because of time, and in fact, I have understood the position you've espoused on this matter. But let me bring in Justice Abdullah as well, who's a private legal practitioner, a lecturer at the UPSC Law Faculty. Justice Abdullah, good evening.
Yes, good evening, Alfred.
Great. And I want to find out from you, from your own reading of this Supreme Court decision on the OSP and whether or not it can initiate cases on corruption-related offenses without necessarily needing authorization from the OSP. Does it answer the question which was at the heart of this suit as to whether or not the OSP needed authorization from the Attorney General to pursue corruption-related offenses or cases, I beg your pardon, cases related to corruption and corruption-related offenses? Because even though this 7-member panel presided over by the Chief Justice held that the OSP has the authority to independently initiate and prosecute cases, they also note that the Attorney General retains the power to enter nolle prosecutor in any case initiated by the OSP. So really, where is the independence?
Indeed, Alfred, I can understand the difficulties in the decision as reported by the media houses. I think that out of fairness, to properly analyze these issues, I'm sure on Saturday, hopefully when we have by the time I'm sure we will have the decision to competently address them on the big issue. However, up to this point, I think that the best form of analysis will be what the media houses have put out there. And I think with viewers and listeners would have to bear with us that our analysis is based purely on those reports and not necessarily our complete reading of the judgment, because the judgment is not out yet. And so on the basis of this, I would say that, first of all, this is a feather, if you like. I think it's a good thing for us. And it's good to the extent that this helps in in the fight against corruption. Because hitherto, let's just suppose this with what the High Court had said about 6 months ago or 4 months ago, when the High Court completely took away the entire prosecutorial powers of the OSP and literally halted almost every prosecution that had been initiated by the OSP. Now, the decision from the Supreme Court restores this authority and limited in a way. But that limitation, I think, is acceptable within legal limits, and I do not think that any Attorney General would want to abuse this constitutional right that it has. And so I would rather take it from the cup being half full rather than being half empty, particularly when you just suppose that with the High Court decision, which was earlier given, that literally would have collapsed the OSP.
You're right about the limitations that we have, obviously. I've not having seen the full details of this particular ruling, but I thank you for your initial analysis and obviously how the coming days will look like on this and whether or not it settles the matter. But maybe quickly before I let you go, do you also pin this down to just the tough war between the AG and the OSP, the personality clash that lawyer Kwasin talks about?
Alfred, can you repeat that? I didn't get that.
I was asking if you also pin this whole issue down and the motivation to pursue this case in the court of law, what has been determined now on the tough war between the OSP and the Attorney General and the personality clash that lawyer Kwasin pointed out.
I do not think that there is a personality clash in this. I do honestly believe that this was a genuine legal tussle, and indeed, nobody would doubt that the independence of the OSP has been a problem, considering the constitutional injunction on the Attorney General to be the sole deciding factor in prosecutorial matters for and on behalf of the state. I think that if we reduce it into personality clashes, I think that we may not be fair to the constitutional injunction as stipulated under Article 88. I think that we would need to be mindful of that and then address it from that angle. I do not think that individuals necessarily should be able to hold all of us to ransom based on their idiosyncrasies when there's a constitutional injunction that makes a particular office the originator, the initiator, and the one against whom any prosecution or suit be made against. Every constitutional law student can tell you from the cases of NPP versus Jerry Rawlings and Martin Amidu versus John Kufuor that the Supreme Court has been consistent with its position that the Attorney General be the one against whom all suits be initiated against, and or for whom a suit against the state or in favor of the state must be brought. And so, based on these, decided cases within this fourth Republican Constitution, it would be unfair that we make this kind of inferences against the personality. I don't think there's a personality court for which we should give it much attention. And I do thank you so much for your thoughts on this. We'll connect again this evening. Appreciate you. Absolutely. It's Justice Abdullahi is private legal practitioner, a lecturer at the UPSC Law Faculty. This is Hot Edition. Maria Ada, who is the Executive Director of Ghana Integrity Initiative, has also been talking about this particular one. They were also interested parties in this particular case. But away from that, a major fault on Ghana's national power grid triggered widespread outages, leaving the capital Accra, the commercial hub of Kumasi, and much of the northern part of that's the eastern and western regions without electricity. Several power plants across Ghana were forced to shut down in the early hours of Wednesday, and then also late, that's Tuesday, that's yesterday. The state-run power distribution company
announced. Wednesday power cut left homes, businesses and essential services without electricity across multiple regions of the country. It has also affected small businesses and people relying on digital services, though big institutions such as hospitals tend to have backup generators. Greatco says it was conducting a comprehensive technical investigation into the matter to determine exactly what caused the outage, and the Director of Communications and also the spokesperson for the Ministry, the Minister of Energy and Green Transition, Richmond Roxon Esquire, is joining us on the telephone for a bit more on this. Mr. Roxon, good evening.
Good evening to you, Alfred, and thank you for the opportunity.
What's the latest update to this outage? Because I was affected, but before I left home, the power had been restored. And do you have an update on how widespread the restoration has been?
Alfred, the last briefing that we had at the ministry will show that we had made significant progress in the restoration process. As you rightly put it, around 3 a.m., we had some system disturbance on the transmission grid, which caused a significant part of the power supply system to go down. And since morning, this restoration process has been ongoing. As far back as 6 a.m., some people had their lights restored, others had their power restored a couple of hours ago. And so we've made significant progress. But we still recognize that some areas are still off. And it's because when it comes to restoration of power, you need to be very cautious about it. You don't just restore the system. You can't compromise safety and the integrity of the system for expediency because you want power restored. And so you have to take your time, go through the process systematically to make sure that you do that. The good news is that, like you said, a lot of areas have been restored, and I'm sure that by close of day heading to midnight or even tomorrow, you should have all other places also being on as well.
Right.
So currently, Greco is also conducting an investigation to ascertain the cause of it. Okay. Preliminary reports that they've provided to the ministry shows that the cause of this incident would be lightning strike when it was raining throughout the night, which affected part of the lines. Indeed, you would all recall that throughout the night it's been raining heavily. And so we are hopeful that all other places and all customers should have power supply soon.
Thank you so much, Mr. Roxon. Appreciate you. And we'll get an update before the end of the day. Thank you for connecting with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Richmond Roxon is the Director of Communications of the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition. Andrew Sifai standing by with the latest in the world of sports after this quick break.
I'm not afraid to be different. I be loud and bold. I know they blend in.
Hello, good evening and welcome to the sports segment here on Hot Edition on TFM 92.7. My name is Andrew Sefa Bamfo. Let's start off from the Women's African Cup of Nations, where the Black Queens are currently leading Cape Verde at the halfway point. Doris Boudouah put the team ahead in the first half after latching on to a through ball from skipper Portia Boache in the 7th minute. Away from the Black Queens to some men's football, because Ghana's Black Satellites would also be in action against Burkina Faso on Thursday in their second group game of the ongoing WAFU B U20 Championship. Now, ahead of the tie, Ghana's head coach Maxwell Kunidu says the team is prepared and have learned from their mistakes from the opening game against Nigeria.
Secondly, we also spoke about how to defend very well, especially under intense pressure. You know, most of the guys are new to this tournament and somewhere like a bit jittery. We have worked on them psychologically. And the physical aspects, most of them has recovered and are ready to meet Burkina tomorrow.
And so that was Black Satellite head coach Maxwell Kunedu speaking ahead of their game. Now, before we go, let's provide you with updates from the Commonwealth Games, which is ongoing in Glasgow, because Ghana's Joseph Paul Amoah advanced to the semis after clocking a time of 20.36 seconds in the 200 meters heats. Now, the veteran sprinter expressed his excitement following his event and says he's looking forward to the semis.
It was good. I want to take every race, every round as it comes. So I wanted to make sure I come out here and try to put myself in a good position going into the semifinals and go back, get some good rest, and come back tomorrow. We are all going to, execute our races. We're here to do our best, and hopefully our best is good enough for some podium and stuff. So yeah, we're all wishing for at least a podium finish. But it happens in track and field. In every sport, it happens. He's had a very tough season, getting injured, African champs and all that stuff. So we are even happy and grateful to have him competing here and making it to the finals.
And so that was sprinter Joseph Paul Amoah speaking, bringing an end to the sports segment here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. My name is Andrew Sefa Bamfo.
Thank you, Andrew Sefa there, and you can find more on 3 Sports. Before we go, the Ministry of Health has announced the immediate temporary closure of the Nursing Training College at Techiman Krobo, following unrest and a breakdown of discipline on campus. In a statement issued earlier today, the ministry said the decision was taken to restore calm and ensure the safety of students, staff, and property of the school. Stay with us. You have more of this on 3news.com, and the drive continues with Martin, DJ Abiam. On behalf of the rest of the team, thank you for joining us. Rosalind, Sixtus, Bright, I'm Alfred Okansi. Have a great evening and join us at 10 p.m. on TV3 and on 3FM for Ghana Tonight.